And then my human brain had to say, that's a rose bush. And I would know, I'm like, my mind is coming in and putting a layer of labeling onto what is beautifully, exquisitely happening without my interference. I'm interfering. Okay, my brain is now interfering. Could I operate without knowing that that was a rose bush? Like, okay, so my body mind is needed to connect to the world because this is how we do it. We connect with each other through labeling, through communication. So we need words, and all the words are all about naming everything. And this thing doesn't even need the labels. Oh, wow. So that brought me into something so sacred and so holy. Something I could taste but not speak about, you know?
Welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds.
Hello and welcome to the Endless Possibilities Podcast. My name is Garrett, and today I'm introducing another wonderful guest I have on the show, Jac O'Keeffe, another Irish teacher. So a little description of Jac and her work. Jac is a spiritual leader, teacher, and the author of two books, Born to be Free and How to Be a Spiritual Rebel. She is also a founding member of the Association for Spiritual Integrity, ASI. This organization encourages spiritual teachers and the community to support one another in a process of growth and spiritual development. It aims to develop a network of resources for those in a role of leadership and encourages continual self-reflection. Another little blurb that Jac has on her website, which I found very interesting: the unfolding of consciousness does not reach its conclusion when you wake up. Some years after my awakening, I realized that a new kind of identification had supplanted the old one. My identity had discreetly shifted to a more expanded identification with what is called in spiritual circles non-dual awareness. In time, I saw that even this new identity had to dissolve. Non-dual awareness opens us up to a sense of spaciousness and vastness. We are nothing and everything, oneness without a second. But what is beyond this experience? What is beyond your identification with the feeling of spaciousness? Beyond your home in pure consciousness, beyond your concept of existence? It is difficult to find words at this stage of our evolution, and my role is not to invent new concepts, but rather to empower you to go there for yourself and see. My teaching is about helping you to attain a level of spiritual maturity in which you are your own guru. You retain your autonomy at every point of awakening, because every level of awakening is holy and wants to release its perfume in the life you live moment by moment, day by day. Where does spiritual seeking come from? It is the human expression of that which expresses you longing to be expressed by you. Spiritual maturity means dropping the seeking and aligning with pure expression, expressing itself. Jac, welcome to the show. Happy you could join me today.
Thank you, Garrett. Good to be here.
Yeah, great. So we're going to have a great chat. Another Irish guest on the show. Thank you so much for being so generous and coming here today. So, Jac, can we get into your story a little bit? Can you tell us about your path and how spirituality opened up for you?
Yeah. You know, when I look back now that I'm in my late 50s, when I look back, it's like there were chunks of different phases that I see were one trajectory, but they're so different to each other. And some things that were hugely important at the time became completely insignificant later on. And, you know, reared in a farm in rural Ireland with all the trappings of a strong work ethic and Catholicism in the background, because it was kind of what happened, not because it was taken seriously. And wanting to know more about God was always there. And I wasn't getting the answers from whatever, school, home, books, whatever I could find, Catholic Church, couldn't find it. And this is, of course, years before there was a mind, body, spirit section in a library or any place. And I suppose a few different like pivotal moments of like recognizing that the clear seeing was there in my childhood, as most people have. And for some of us, it gets knocked out completely. It did for me. And for others, they remember and held on to some deep insight from their childhood. What kind of helped to knock it out for me was studying theology at third level. In my attempt to find out more about God, it turned me completely away from religion, but I didn't have the awareness that religion and spirituality were really different to each other. And religion is focusing, if I can be really simplistic, it has an orientation towards the outside, and at the very advanced level, it brings you back in. But spirituality is all about going in. For me, that's how I see it. And so I became an atheist and threw the whole thing out in one swoop in the middle of second year in university. And I just somehow finished my degree, barely scraped through, and got interested in social community development, social issues, and I went in that direction. I was drawn always, though, to the arts, and particularly to music, and felt that somehow that brought me to something that I didn't know what it was. There was something free in music, something opened up in the arts, in a painting, and I was like, oh, there it is, there it is. And I remember going to a gallery like in my early 20s and advocating atheism, going to a gallery and looking for just one piece in a museum that would open a portal to something I had no words for, that I wasn't able to articulate. And along went the next 10 years, pretty much like that, playing hard, working hard, getting married, doing all the usual stuff, getting a mortgage, all the traditional things. And at 30, my third eye opened in a way that was very crude, very rough, and what was naked to our raw human eye became what was invisible to the naked eye became visible to me. And I had no place to put this at all. So I'm like, am I going psychotic? What's going on? And so it led me to changing my work life, because I was too darn interested in like, how come I can see chakras? How come I can see what's going on in people's health? How come I can, clearly there are past lives. How can I see dead people? Why am I interested in talking to dead people? Why am I more interested in what dead people have to say than living people? This is too big to ignore. I ain't shutting this down. All right, let it rip. Let's see what it does. I'm going to go for it. And so it changed my life. And so that was the start of, I suppose, my own starting to come together of what I had forgotten from my childhood, what art did, what some drugs did, but I wanted something in a sustainable way where I didn't have to go to a substance or to a place to be invited to what was beyond words. Mm. And somehow all I had was this third eye opening and this other veil of reality coming in, and recognizing what the heck else is there that we're ignoring, that our mind filters out. And I remember recognizing in my late 20s, the limitations for all of us are in the way we think. That's the issue. It's not like I was reared in this way and my conditioning or my trauma has limited my life. No, it's the way I process it. It's something to do with my mind that has created the limitations of how I perceive who I am, what this world is. I was onto that pretty early. And what assisted me through all those young adult years was I knew I had plenty of trauma, that we all have plenty of trauma, but I wanted to do something about it. And I was attending a psychotherapist for many years, starting when I was 19. So I was given a toolkit through that work to better understand my thinking mind, what projections were, what was mine, what was somebody else, what boundaries looked like, how to take responsibility for my own impact. I started to scratch the surface in those other areas that helped me to refine how I showed up in the world, but also to be able to digest what was happening to me and to find some stability even when the world crumbles and is not what you think it to be.
Hi, guys. I hope you are enjoying the show. If you could, please hit subscribe. Subscribing to our channel helps promote the show to new audiences. And the bigger we grow our audience, the bigger the guests we can have on the show. So please, if you want to continue watching free spiritual interviews and content such as this show, help us by subscribing. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the show with Jack. So, Jack, what was happening? Was it the start of a spiritual awakening? Because just listening to the language that you're using and the fact that the third eye opened as well, I had something very similar in my early 30s. The third eye opened, psychic abilities developed, but it wasn't spiritual awakening. I was having the out of body experiences. I was seeing visions of the future, all that kind of stuff, but it was far from a spiritual awakening.
Do you think it helped you to see that the role of
Yes.
the mind?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
There we
of
go.
course. Yeah.
I think that was its greatest purpose for me also. It showed me, oh, the limitations are in my mind here. It's my mind is doing all this. Some veil has broken down and another reality has shown up, but it's still my mind. It's
Yeah.
still all my mind. But what else is my mind controlling, filtering out, filtering in? So then I became interested in my mind. Did it make you get interested in how you create your own perception?
My whole thing was I had a fear of death and I wanted to find answers about what happened when we die. And I went down the whole rabbit hole of past life, out of body experience, and it just opened up. It just started happening. And then I couldn't shut it down. And about a year and a half of it going crazy, eventually I just lost interest in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, did it like it opened me up to the reality of there's something greater than what I can perceive with my senses, right? Totally.
Right.
And I know I don't live. If my that I know that if my body dies, I live on. That was a
Yes.
huge thing, right?
And what lives on? Did you become interested in what lives on, or was it the whole package lives on?
Yes. So but it's still like for me, there was still a whole lot of ego while it was happening. It was like, oh, it was a great story. I could tell people about it. The phenomena died down, and
Yeah.
then the work started, right? The classrooms, the teachings, the been shown
Yeah.
my ego, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the spiritual awakening came probably about 5 or 6 years later, just unexpected. I didn't know what spiritual awakening was, Jack.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't either.
No.
I didn't either. I didn't have the language. I didn't have, I was just working with what was showing up around me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I suppose there's pros and cons when you look at it today with, the internet. I mean, that was the difference, really. That changed everything. Information is so freely available now. And misinformation and disinformation is freely available too. And how do you weed through it? But like the language for awakening is one thing. Without that information, there was something raw and naive that we had. We had to figure it out. We we had to trust our own experience rather than go to an external authority. I didn't know anybody I could talk to about this. And I would share it with my
Yeah,
psychotherapist.
same as me. Yeah.
But like there was new age stuff happening in Ireland at the time, but I couldn't access the layer of people who were talking about capital R reality, the awakening process. I never knew it existed. I had to leave my country to try and find something and follow the next step. And I didn't know what I was looking for. I felt I was being pushed rather than searching. I was like, I have to do this. I have to go here. I don't know why I have to do it. And friends and family were like, girl, slow down. Like, what are you looking for? I don't know. Am I even looking for something? I don't know, but I'm being pushed and I got to go. I got to go and I got to do this and figure out if there's something to figure out. I have no clue, but I'm being driven. Did you have that experience, Gareth?
No. So I had a business. I was just going about, still I was never what you would call a spiritual seeker. I was interested in meditating and having a better quality of life, having a quieter mind, and I just had a spontaneous awakening one morning. I went to the gym and was cracked open, and that changed the course of my life. I mean, the spirituality, the furthest I had come along in terms of like awakening was like Eckhart Tolle, practicing the power of now. I kind of had an idea of what that was,
Yeah.
witnessing, but I had no idea that something wakes up through me. That I was completely thrown. I was completely thrown. I was like, what has happened? And then the first teacher I found when I started trying to research what happened to me was Adi Ashanti. So I was very lucky
Ah,
to discover Adi.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but I didn't go traveling anywhere.
Yeah. 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 I did, because I suppose really because I had to leave everything that I was attached to. And
Okay.
I learned by experience. It's kind of just how I show up in the world. So I have the experience, and then I found out the theory afterwards, and I find out how I screwed up,
Yes,
and I find
same as
out
me.
afterwards. Yeah, yeah, and it can be a painful way to go, but once you embrace it and you go, actually, this is just how it rolls out here, then it's fine. Then okay, I'm on a learning curve. I know what I'm doing here, but I just keep going. And however it unfolds for people is the only way it can unfold for you. And you might as well just embrace your own methodology because it's unique to you, you
Mm,
know? And I suppose the definition of what awakening is, I mean, there's layers and layers to it.
yeah.
Do you know? I had to see the role of my mind. I had to see it in order to prep for awakening. I had to do psychotherapy and have a traumatic childhood too, in order to learn and get tools about observing my thoughts and discovering the role of emotions in creating my experience. And I had to learn all that in prep because there's layers and layers and layers and layers to it. And then, the insights into our true nature, we can go into that, but I could also say there's a post that phase too of where attachment to the non-dual awareness becomes something else that'll be taken or
Hmm.
dissolved,
Yeah.
or that gets surrendered without you doing anything
Yeah.
if you're not attached to it. You know, true nature and capital L self that we now call, I'm assuming that's where you're calling awakening.
Yeah. I mean, the awakening that I had was like what the classic self-realization, right? The self woke up to the reality of itself and
Yeah,
started,
yeah,
yeah, looking out through my eyes.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
Jack, did that happen for you before you left Ireland, or did it?
yeah, in lots of different ways, in lots of
Okay.
different, yeah, yeah. I became a healer, which was very different to my work and to my work prior to my third eye opening. And so I was steeped in it 24/7. I remember between clients going out to a garden where the house I was renting, I went out to these beautiful gardens. And in the gardens, most days, something would be looking through and something would be, through your senses, Jack, let me touch this flower. Let me touch this leaf.
Yeah.
Embrace this. So there was a sense of, what the heck is that? Is that another being? No, bugger off, bugger off. Nobody's getting into me. No, 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 that's not happening here. What is this? I'm like, oh, I didn't have the word that it was consciousness. It was like, oh, this is like purity, source, engaging, playing with its own manifestation as Jack and that rose bush, just for the heck of it, just for the heck of it. that used to happen a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'd no clue where to put it. And I'm glad I couldn't put it anywhere, because it doesn't need to be put anywhere. If you put it someplace, then the mind is categorizing it and it's been diminished and
Yeah.
housed into another phenomenon. When actually it's a very reified, is that the word? It's a thin, nebulous, pure version of manifestation where consciousness is perceiving itself as consciousness.
Yeah.
And then my human brain had to say, that's a rose bush. And I would know, I'm like, my mind is coming in and putting a layer of labeling onto what is beautifully, exquisitely happening without my interference. I'm interfering. Okay, my brain is now interfering. Could I operate without knowing that that was a rose bush? Like, okay, so my body mind is needed to connect to the world, because this is how we do it. We connect with each other through labeling, through communication. So we need words, and all the words are all about naming everything. And this thing doesn't even need the labels. Oh, wow. So that brought me into something so sacred and so holy, something I could taste but not speak about, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Until I went and found language for it. And, oh yeah, consciousness is, experiencing itself as consciousness. And then I got the jargon. But I'm glad that it was known experientially before the wording came, because
It's a big advantage, Jack.
it's a big advantage.
Yeah.
Big
Yeah.
advantage.
Yeah, rather than reading about it, wanting it, grasping, looking for it all the time, that seems to kind
Oh,
of just push it out of people's grasp so
it
much.
does. It does, because the mind now is co-opting it, and it sees as something. Its mind is going to do what the mind will do, you
Yeah,
know. So the pre-availability of internet, there was advantages to it too. We didn't have the jargon of what it was. We didn't have that wealth of information for our minds to
there's
set
almost
it
too
up as
much now.
something to grasp.
Yeah, yeah.
So there's pros and cons to it all, isn't there?
Well, there is. I mean, I was a little bit similar. Mine happened, didn't really have any context or framework for it. The very same as you. I would go out for my walk and I'd be like, wow. It was like I felt like I was an alien that had been dropped on the planet for the very first time, looking at everything. And people must have thought I was crazy, because I'd be
Oh,
walking around with tears rolling down my face at the
yes.
beauty of
Beautiful.
everything, and not knowing, and not even wanting to talk about it, Jack. I didn't do. I had no one to. I didn't have a circle, a network,
Yeah.
and I would just go home and go, okay, interesting. And
Yeah.
that went on for about 2 years before I kind of found. I had a friend who actually introduced me to you. Actually, he was in the kind of satsang scene around Ireland, and he introduced me to you and another Irish teacher. I think his name was Omani. I think you'd had done the Rick Archer interviews at the time. Yeah, he'd
Oh,
sent me
yeah.
them. Yeah. So it was interesting listening to you talking about it, an Irish person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There's something about that, isn't there, around connecting through your culture.
Yes.
There's something about that. Because I don't do podcasts about teaching anymore, because I'm not teaching. But when I found out you were Irish, I'm like, absolutely, yes. So some part of me is drawn to that.
Yeah.
I don't know why yet. This is always the way. Here's the experience happening, and my mind will make some sense of it downriver.
Yeah, and it's fun, and people will
Fun.
appreciate it, right? They will listen to
Yeah,
this conversation.
yeah, yeah.
This is what this is what I do it for. Actually, the whole
Right.
podcast kind of like it morphed. It was something else. It was me and a friend who used to do it, and it was just the two of us talking. And then she had a baby, and then she gave up doing it. And then I had to invite people on, and then it just grew and grew and grew, and so
Yes,
it's going great. Yeah,
yes, and here you are. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But
So
there's something, I just want to kind of emphasize that
sure.
there's something about this process and how it evolves from your own culture. There's something there, like at this stage of the game now for me, and my hands are kind of, for somebody who's listening on the audio, my hands are like going across a rainbow. It's like where I'm at now. There's something about the depth of Celtic spirituality, of the ancient paganism, and how the purity of what was always known by my ancestors.
Mm.
Somehow it gets to be honored. That lineage, that's my lineage.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and a connection to that. It's part of the grace, the holiness, the sacredness that
Yeah.
it has to come in, you know, and that's part of moving from awakening being a process for the mind into bring it right down into your body, the falling away of the awakening process, the boredom with meditation, because
We'll get to that, Jac. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about that.
All right.
Okay. So just briefly, right? So you kind of started off healing. Just how did that come about, Jac, for you, the healing? What, like, the third eye opened, psychic abilities, you started seeing beings. How did you know you could do healing?
A spirit guide, who's actually a person still alive, appeared in my bedroom and told me, as much as my brain could handle, that I should stop I was an arts consultant, finish my contracts, don't take on new contracts, let my work change into working in this area and work with what I knew so far, which was there are spirits that need healing. And so, and that is often what disturbs human people, is a spiritual, what's the right word to use here?
Attachment, is it?
Interaction.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
attachment. Yes, attachment from the non-physical realm, disturbing somebody who's here. So I did that work for a while, and then my car mechanic said, like, look, it was a year and a half later, and he says, if you ever do what you do with dead people, if you ever do that on living people, I'd love to be a guinea pig. And I went, oh shit, here it is. Here's the next shift. And so I said, all right, come on up on Friday and I'll throw a mattress on the floor in the living room. I don't know what I'm doing. We'll see. And he fell sound asleep. And oh my God, I could see his life. I'm like, okay, it's not dead people anymore. It's living people with his life. And you need to leave your marriage. And it all opened up.
Wow.
And so I started to like put the word out saying, okay, I'm no longer the people then that I had done this spiritual ghost healing work with. I told them, look, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm working on the living. And it went rife. It went nuts.
Of
Then,
course.
yeah, it went nuts. And I had a lot of success with people who were psychotic. I worked closely with a psychiatrist, and he came as a client to suss me out because he'd heard about me. And changes happen, and he went, okay, you're onto something. You're not doing any hoogie woogie stuff. Tell me more. Let's meet and talk. And so he would call me and give me a description of a patient of his who would be in a psychotic episode. And I would like, okay, I got it. I found him. And I could talk to the person in a psychotic episode and alleviate their fear so that they could come back into their body. They would be on
Wow.
another dimension, and I'd
Yeah.
find them. And
Yeah.
they'd come down and they'd be in like a padded cell, like in hospital, and the hospital saying, we didn't even give them the right amount of antipsychotic drugs. How is he here again and down and out of it? So a lot of things like that happened where we shared clients, and I ended up finding a repeating pattern with people with depression. I'm like, I'm saying the same thing to everybody that comes with depression, chronic depression. And so I started running residential courses for people with depression. And then that brought me into having more work than I could manage.
Mm.
And one day somebody phoned and I said, okay, I'll put you on the waiting list. And she said, okay, when will you phone me back? And I said, 6 months. And she goes, that's ridiculous. 6 months time before I'll have 3 issues more by then. I need you now. I'm like, you're right. You're right. You're right. Let me think about it. And within an hour, I cancelled all of my waiting list. I finished off the people I was seeing, and I'm like, okay, this is nuts. This is nuts. What am I going to do about my own journey? What's next for me? And I put a tent on my back and I stayed in a campsite in the south of Spain for 3 months, saying,
Wow.
I'm just going to sit in the sun and go back to the source and the center of our planet, the sun, the center of our galaxy, and see what the heck the source of light and the source of life force has to do with what moves through this form. Like, what's that? What's that? And so I did. And I came back to Ireland, and my husband picked me up in the airport, and I went, oh my God, no, I have to leave him. Oh my God, I have to leave my marriage. I have to leave Ireland. I have to leave everything. Let go of everything. And I did. And I ended up 6 months later in India, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of, you know, sharp shocks happened, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Getting stripped again and again and again, you know?
Okay. And in the awakening process, right? So what happened then? The healing, did the healing fall away?
I gave it up because I knew it was a distraction. It became a distraction. I wasn't learning anymore. I wasn't learning. I wasn't growing.
Okay.
And I have to be evolving. If I don't honor that, I'm going to get dysfunctional, and then my work would be impacted.
Jack, what was it about the energy healing that was a distraction? They say all of the cities, right? When the cities come
Mm.
in, they can really pull a person from their path, right? Is that what it was?
I think it was more to do with my alignment with nature, with the planet, that my humanness is part of the ecosystem. And I feel I have to honor the growth cycle of the Jac woman, like the coconut tree outside my window honors being a coconut tree. I have to honor that. I don't get away with ignoring my humanness. I don't. And it's connected to the earth. It's that part of it. And my own evolution, if I'm doing repetitive stuff and drawing together clients that have the same issues, so like so many people with depression, okay, I'll create a course so I can work with 6 people together instead of 1. Okay. And all I was doing was multiplying, but I wasn't getting new insights. I felt I'm not growing anymore. I'm just serving in the way I can, but the service isn't enough. I have to be growing and serving. That's the way it rolls for me. I have to do both. I have to honor the evolution of my humanness and the evolution of my own, of how consciousness shows up here. I have to do that, or I get sick. I do get sick
Okay.
for that.
Yeah. So we were just speaking prior to hitting record, right? And I was telling you a little bit about there was a process for me started to happen where I actually had a restlessness. I had gone through all the awakenings as well into that the non-existence, and for maybe 4 years I had kind of found myself in the role of a teacher, and people turning up and doing retreats, and every
Yeah,
time I turn my Zoom on there's 100 people,
yeah,
and
yeah,
I just had this restlessness that was coming up all the time. And I don't know, I just got up one morning and I was like, I don't know, something has happened, something is strange. And I went for a walk, and it was like as if the sun, the clouds parted and the sun came
yeah,
through, and it was like
yeah,
a veil lifted, and it was like,
yeah.
oh, awakening has been a dream. The whole awakening
Yes,
process had been a dream.
yes,
I had somehow found myself with bricks being built up around me by people who were putting me on a pedestal as a teacher, and an identity had built around it.
yeah.
And the whole thing crumbled. And now I'm kind of like, I
Wonderful.
don't know what I'm doing. I don't,
Yeah,
I don't know like where it's
yeah,
going to go. So
yeah.
as I was reading your introduction prior to
Uh-huh,
starting, you
uh-huh,
went through the very same thing. The whole
yeah,
identity of non-duality fell
yeah,
away. Do you want to
yeah.
talk to me about that, Jack?
Yeah, it's funny because, I, I'm sure, well, I know, like yourself, you're friends with some colleagues who would also have gone through the process.
Yeah.
And and some of us see through the non-dual myth, and some of us are very attached to it. It's like,
Mm.
wow, this is how it's playing. You know, we all know what we know, and there's no right or wrong. But it's pretty difficult to weave through where attachment to the non-dual is running, and where the non-dual is also seen to be another game, you know? And like, it is and it isn't another game. You have to go through it. And And consciousness itself shows up to be a myth. Consciousness itself. Now, I had a conversation with one spiritual teacher who's older than I and very well known. And he says, no, you're gone back into the mind. If you see consciousness is broken down, that's a thought. I'm like, the way it breaks down, I guarantee you it's not a thought. It's not. So you see, we have all kinds of resistances to make sure that the non-dual awakening holds up. We do not want to see that awakening itself is a game, is a myth. We don't. Especially if we built a career around it, we have an identity around it, all the subtle stuff. Oh, but there's nobody here. Yeah, but you watch. There's nobody there. But let's see where the stickiness is between your body, mind, form, your shadow. We all have shadow. As long as we're in a form, we still have shadow. There's part of our psyche that we can't see. You watch to see where is there stickiness because of the attachment to what has been created. You nailed it. But there is existential fear. And if existential fear hasn't been grappled with and you lost, and it swallowed you up and it feels like hell. All right. Okay. Now maybe consciousness will show itself to be a myth. Even consciousness, even pure consciousness, even capital L self, that falls away too. It breaks down. It breaks down. And I've spoken about this, and somebody has said, yeah, but what sees that it breaks down? It's like, no. Don't go back into the mind to bring the tools of the mind to understand the breakdown. Be sure you're not attached to the awakening process, to the other side of awakening, and it will break itself. It will break itself. But what sees that it breaks? I have no words for that.
No, me neither. I was part of a research study and this Omni integration phase where all experience outside of your own consciousness, all the phenomena just falls away. Yeah. And
Outside of
even
your own consciousness. Tell me more about that. I want to make sure I understand what you're saying.
So my understanding of awakening, it's like self-realization, the God consciousness, unity consciousness. Then there was Brahman, which was the no self, non-existence. And then there was para-brahman, where the soul comes back into creation and it fills up with divinity, this divinity, and you perceive everything to have a kind of a shimmering quality to it. And it feels like the divine forces come down. It almost like you become a conduit for the divine forces. Everything crumbled. Everything, all the psychic abilities fell away. Anything that I could perceive, it was almost like I had just become pure consciousness. It wasn't like there was a Garrett questioning consciousness or God and receiving information back. It was just like I had become it, and now I couldn't experience anything outside of myself. So all phenomena just stopped. And that was part of talking to Luciano and Rastal, who I interviewed. And they came up with this term of omni integration, which was for that. But then I had the next thing where awakening in itself just crumbled. It was like there was never anyone here to awaken in the first place. It was a story. The whole thing was a story, an identity, because I was talking about it. I was talking in front of people. I had wrote a book. I had built up an identity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, and it wasn't that I wanted to do it. It wasn't that I even knew that there was an identity. It just happened. It just, yeah.
And did consciousness, pure consciousness, show itself to be illusory also?
I mean, it's just a place of just not knowing. I just don't know. I don't know anything. I don't really know. It's like the whole story just crumbled.
Yeah. Consciousness itself blew up for me 2011 or something.
Was that the Brahman stage, though, where you just get absolutely annihilated?
It's para-brahman.
Okay.
It's para-brahman. Like consciousness itself is only recognizable because it sees its own, it recognizes that it exists. So consciousness itself that doesn't know it exists Now you're deeper than the non-dual.
That's
Consciousness
what
itself,
happened. Yeah. Yeah.
okay?
Yeah.
That breaks too. That breaks too. Yeah. The building blocks of what pure consciousness is breaks too.
Okay.
And
And then what? Yeah.
There's nothing. There never was, there never could be. There's nothing. There's no time, there's no space. There's nothing.
Yeah.
This thing is dreaming itself.
Yes. Yes.
There is nothing. There's nothing. Never was, never could be. There's nothing. And that for me is liberation. That's the difference between awakening and liberation, you know?
Yes. Yeah. So that, like, what you kind of described there to me was what I would call Brahman. The it's like nothing, absolute nothingness, and everything you look at and perceive is somehow projected onto the screen of nothingness. And it's almost like if you could look around the corner, you know that everything is printed on that screen, right? It's just arising as you look at it, and when you turn away, it crumbles.
So the perception that's flowing through breaks down. And then some kind of rest in being deeply human showed up for me.
Yeah.
So it's consciousness itself. It's you know, that anything at all that it sees is not real. It's like, hold on, where the perception is arising from, that's the source of all.
Yes.
Breaks down.
Yeah.
So that's para. That's
yeah. Yeah. And then you just find yourself totally human, totally ordinary. It kind of feels like awakening never even happened. You're back at the start somehow, but not the same.
yeah. No, not the same at all.
Yeah.
No. Yeah. And meditation doesn't, it's like, well, that's for my mind. Okay, my physiology likes meditating. I do it for my physiology.
So the very same thing happened to me. It was the whole, like, meditation just doesn't take me anywhere. It
Yeah.
doesn't go any deeper. No.
Doesn't.
No. It's just
No pull for spiritual experiences. They're about as interesting as this cup of Barry's tea. Like,
yeah. Yeah. It's spirituality collapses as well, right? It's the whole story of yes. I think we're ruining this for everybody, Jac, are we?
yeah, and why not?
Yeah.
And maybe the counterbalance to, you know, to how we project. We want, I don't know, God to be the parent, or capital L self to be nirvana, and so much of the scriptures have said, oh, eternal bliss, and it's like, oh, I'm sorry, that was marketing. That's really useful to get you going, and you have to go through it. You have to go through it because it's your evolution. That is consciousness playing itself out. So do it, do everything, go after it, and it'll all be taken from you, and it'll all collapse, and the whole thing will have been futile in the first place, you know. But you can't stop the ride and enjoy the ride, but it ain't going anywhere, actually. There's nothing.
Yeah. I made a video about 3 weeks ago, and I spoke about all this, and yeah, I think people were kind of, they're like, oh, thanks for ruining everything on me.
Yeah, that's great. I'm delighted that they saw that they had this goal set up. Buy a new car, it's easier if that'll do the goal for you, do you know? But it has to fall apart. I remember an experience. I was in Pondicherry, a city in southeastern India, and actually, yeah, and Mother Mira from Germany, an Indian woman who lives in Germany.
I've been to Garshan for a number of times.
Yeah, that's it. I went to her in Germany, and then she was coming to India, and I'm like, okay, let's visit her again. And I was just sitting there, and I had a big mala at the time, and I was doing my japa, just repetition of a mantra, which was what used to go on in my mind a lot. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, and I'd be, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I'm like, Jesus, I'm saying it in my sleep, you know? So I was sitting there with my mala, and clear as day, the more you sit in front of somebody that you think can give you something, the further away you are from what's already baked here inside. I was like, but I like having a goal. I want to bow down in front of somebody who has walked the path that I'm trying to walk. Jac, that's the problem. Can you let go of that attachment? I bawled. I couldn't stop the tears, the grief of the part of my brain that had set up goals, paths, because our humanness wants to do that. And I was the last person to go up to Mother Mirror because I couldn't move. I wanted to honor the grief and cry. And then I lifted my head. I'm like, oh, Jesus, there's 4 people left. And they were like, do you want to come up? Do you want to come up? And I was like, this is pointless, but okay, let's just go through the motion. And now, I honor my humanness that wants to have goals, and I want to honor my body and do exercises for my osteoporosis. And I want to be kind today. And I want to leave the world a better place. And I want to eat well. And these are the kind of goals that I set now, but they're kind of contained within the day.
Yeah.
And they're beautiful and so sacred, much more than like I have a statue of Kali right there,
I have one here as well.
Yeah. And I'm like, hey, sister, it's like a great equalizer showed up when I was willing to let go of the need of having a goal. But it was taken from me rather than my brain deciding, oh, I won't, meditate anymore. I won't sit at the altar anymore. That's not going to work. Do it all until it's done, until it's dry.
It's useful, right? It definitely is useful. Yeah.
It's kind of like in The Wizard of Oz. It's like that's where Oz is, but you got to walk the path in this direction. It's a little bit like that, You still got to do it to discover that it's nothing. You got to do it in order to break down the myth that it's something. And spiritual experiences are great fun and things explode. And oh my God, it feels like you come out of a straitjacket with every big insight, And I've had many more than my brain can remember. Huge, huge seeings and insights and things I could process, some things I couldn't process, some things that left me traumatized, all of it. And now they're kind of, I don't know, like as spiritual experiences don't happen. Living my day happens. Would I have called something spiritual experiences 20 years ago? I probably would have. But I don't differentiate now. It's Jac having a normal human life.
Yeah. I mean, the similarities with my paths, it's the same. I mean, the spiritual awakening, I had all of the same stuff. The crown cracking open, Kundalini awakening, all of the visitations from the gods and the goddesses turned up for me. And then you're just back, completely normal, nothing happening. Did it even happen? It's like I wrote a book about the whole thing, and I'm like, did any of that actually even really happen? You mentioned Pondicherry. I was shown a past life where I was a devotee of the mother in Pondicherry, and I lived in the ashram with her in a previous life. And at the time, it seemed very important, and especially with that energy that came in around the two, Sri Aurobindo and the mother. And now it just feels like another. Did I just dream it all? I don't know.
Yeah. It was dreamed.
Yeah. That's what it feels like. Yeah, dreamed. It was like, some use, but now it's just, you're back. But very similar to you, Jac. It's like I get up, I go for a run, I do a little bit of yoga because the body just needs it. And it's just very ordinary. Like it's just a very ordinary spirit. There's no spirituality anymore.
Yes.
No meditating, no japa, no none of it. It just
yeah. Yeah. But I do Agni Hotra in the morning because it helps the planet. And in the evening, if I'm around, I love ceremony. I love going to sacred prayer places here. Devotion still runs through me. I suppose, I'm passionate about spiritual leaders upping our game so that we do less harm and we're more
Yeah,
responsible for our own impact on
yeah.
students and followers.
Actually, Jack, I watched one of your videos maybe about a year ago where you spoke about spiritual transmissions, and oh my God, that was an amazing video. Do you remember the one you spoke about? No?
No transmission.
You're like me. I can't remember anything. Yeah, you spoke about
Yeah,
spiritual
memory.
transmissions. Yeah. Yeah.
Memory is a real issue. And just somebody told me recently, because our emotions play. I just want to share this to anybody who's
Sure.
listening, because I only heard it recently and I would have loved to have heard it 10 years ago, that our emotions play a huge part in registering memory.
Yeah.
Because what's emotionally upsetting, of course, we remember very well.
Yeah.
And what brings us great happiness, we remember really good things, but the emotion is involved. And because we're not so emotionally volatile anymore, and it's kind of an even keel ordinariness, we don't remember as well.
It doesn't
So
leave an imprint.
it doesn't imprint.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it becomes a pain in the ass because it's like, shoot, did I meet that person? They know my name. I'm like, sorry, did I?
Yeah.
And this happens a lot, like.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's like
Are you?
spiritual Alzheimer's that sets
Yeah,
in. It's just,
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And
it's a
I was hyper
paradigm.
vigilant of my surroundings prior to awakening. And now it's just like, oh, I don't even look to see people. I'm
That's
just go
right.
about, yeah, just,
That's right.
it's
That's
like,
right. Sorry, I
it,
didn't mean to trap
no, no, no,
off.
no, no, no,
I
you're
just
totally
wanted to
fine.
kind of tell people it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay when it goes, we haven't figured that out yet. It's a thing, you know.
Yeah. So Jack, tell me like you said you don't teach anymore, but what is your work? Like you still have a
Uh,
website, obviously.
yeah, the website is there. The website is still there. I leave it there. What I'm doing now is I became more interested, I suppose, in 2013, 14. Actually, no, I was interested as a teenager in like, why, are like the priests in the Catholic Church behaving badly? What, why does that go on? The scandals started to break,
Mm,
about 10 years later. And I was waiting for the scandals to break. I knew they would, you know, in my mid-20s, first guy, oh yeah, he's got an 18-year-old son, this very well-known, very well-loved priest. And I went, oh, thank heaven, there's going to be loads, it has to keep coming. I remember a friend saying, oh, you were waiting for this? How did you know? I said, there's something about spiritual leaders not behaving well and not knowing how to do better and not willing to be accountable. There's a gap somewhere in the education of the priests. I had that when I was a teenager. And here I am now, the interest in it in 2015, 16, 17, 18 started to grow. And I set up an organization with Rick Archer and Craig Holliday to encourage better practice. To like, listen, the teachings don't tell us, because they wanted us to live like, they assumed we'd live separate from everybody. We'd be celibate our whole lives. We'd have this monastic framework where they'd be kind of a bit of a cage around us and we'd be protected by our community. It's like, that'd probably keep us out of harm's way. If you never touch money, you never touch sex, you know,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that might keep you out of harm's way. It's not like that anymore. It didn't keep everybody out of harm's way. It kept some out of harm's way. So now it's like we have this big gap in our education. We don't know that we are responsible for impact. We just think, but I was in satsang, and what came through me? I mean, I wasn't there. It's like, okay, you weren't there. All right. But your mind and your body allowed the transmission and the words to come through. You played a part and you are responsible for that. As long as your body is walking. You are responsible for what it does and how it interprets and how it engages. And so I love working with the Association for Spiritual Integrity. We're not funded. We're 7 years down the line. I didn't know if it was going to be a startup that failed. Is the culture ready for it? And you bet it's ready for it. You bet. People want to do better. They're like, I don't know how to manage finances. I don't know. Like, what do I do when I'm attracted to students? Like, help. Who can I ask? Where can I go? So, I mean, it's just a few of us, and we're doing this voluntary, and we're like, there's training programs we could cultivate. There's things we can do to learn how to be better human beings so that we can do less harm and be accountable. And so the first thing we did is we took 3 years to create a code of ethics, because no code of ethics out there was appropriate for spiritual leadership. And it had to be equally for, a healer as a rabbi. It had to be equally as significant. And we created one that's evolving with a lot of community consultation. And people sign up to it. And what we've discovered now is that people sign up to it, but they don't actually realize, oh yeah, of course I'll, not be mindful of getting free labor from my students. Of course I'll honor that. Of course I will refer out if I don't know the answer, because it sounds good, but actually this means you might have to change your behavior. So really taking the code of ethics on board, it's rare that happens. It's rare. And so members of the ASI, of which there's about 700 now without advertising.
Wow.
Yeah. The spiritual leaders just like, oh, I want to do better. I need to do better. But we've got a gap between what they think they're doing and what we think we're doing. I'm one too. What we think we're doing and actually what we're really doing, big gap. There's our shadow. There's what we're not seeing. We're just not seeing it in our own humanness.
We can't though, can we? We need
can't.
others to shine
To
back,
reflect
it back.
Just like we need a spiritual teacher at a certain point, we need others to reflect it back because we can't see. And that continues. It's because we're human. It
And
continues.
Jackie, even the teacher will mirror back, the students will mirror back what's unresolved in the teacher as well, though.
Yeah,
right?
and the teacher will say it's your ego. You're projecting, usually.
Yeah.
Usually that's what happens.
Of course, yeah.
Because the teacher is in the zone, whatever is presented is ego. It's like, it might be yours. It might be yours. No, they're projecting their stuff. And it's like, actually, you can make it fit. We can use spiritual jargon to make any
Of course we can.
sentence from a student sound like their ego. We can.
Yeah.
And there lies the blind spot. It's like double check, take a moment. Is this a gift from a student where they're showing you something about yourself? And very often it is. And I used to always take those things for a walk and talk to my colleagues about, like, don't you take it for a walk? If like in the heat of the moment, I might say, maybe, but it could also be this in your own ego. And then I was like, hold on, Jac, hold on. No, there's a stone in my shoe. No, take it for a walk. I'd be like, they were onto something. They were onto something. It wasn't exactly what they said, but they were onto something. It was usually that. They were smelling something that was off. And there it is. And that's the thing I need to heal or go back into some therapy or take on do body work or, address it, be responsible for myself.
Yeah, I have a very good friend who I mentioned earlier on who told me about you a couple of years ago, and he's a psychotherapist and his work is all around spirituality. He's a student of Thomas Hubel. I don't know if you've come across Thomas Hubel.
Yeah.
So, and I interviewed Simon on the show. He's so clear, and what a great friend to have, to sit. And I did a lot of psychotherapy with him, and like, there's so much that we can overlook. We can just think, oh yeah, well, I'm spiritual, or oh, I've gone through an awakening, but our human can still be really messy, Jac, right?
Yeah, that's right. It can. And one thing that this is the first time I'm saying this anyplace publicly. I got divorced last year. And when I look back at who I was when I got married, I was so absorbed in the non-dual. I don't know, I was kind of ethereal. you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of the capacities of our mind that helps us to label and to see and to choose and to discern, they hadn't reactivated.
Mm.
I was in that, like, I don't know, that beautiful sacred place. I was in no shape to make a decision around who to marry. There was a yes that would always come before a no. I saw the flow and okay, this wants to happen, this wants to happen. Now, oh gosh, there's so much more of my humanness that's activated. I'll be able to see, well, yes and no. We'll have a relationship, but I'm not going to marry you. No, because of ABCD. You know, I didn't have that capacity because I was not ready to go back into the world in such a serious way as getting married, a decision around getting married. So I can see, you know, it's just like, wow, there is like re-engaging in the world when I wasn't ready for such a
Yeah.
big life event, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like we can all go and sit in a cave and meditate and float away in
Yeah,
consciousness and everything's great. But when we re-enter the marketplace and actually have
yeah,
to deal with other humans,
yeah,
like, yeah, it's like, okay, where does all your spirituality get you now?
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
can you meet other people where they're at? Or do you know, is there just transmission flowing out of you that is distracting what really needs to be met in each other?
Mm.
You know, it can work against you,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know? And I
Yeah.
learned an awful lot, but it wasn't easy, you know?
Amazing, Jack.
Yeah. So, I mean, growth is ongoing. This is how I know at the start of the interview, it was like experience and then, you know, growing from that and then learning the nuances of what that was about in order to share it, in order to be better in the world in some way.
I have to agree. I have to agree with you because I'm kind of in the same place now where I feel okay, right? Consciousness seems to have a journey, right? Where it kind of it seems to like it fizzles out or it reaches it knows itself fully. And then you're back and it's like now your being has to evolve, right? You have to
That's right.
your
And it
beingness, you have
might
to
be that you
become
have
love.
exactly. And it might be that you have to learn how to use power well, and you might have to set up boundaries, and you might have
Yeah.
to, you know, be responsible for yourself completely and not expect whatever it is, you know, that comes
It's
with
like
the
you're doing
trust.
a reading on me at the moment, Jack. Because the whole boundaries thing for me has been prevalent at the moment.
Yeah,
It was just coming in on top of me, and I had to put
yeah,
boundaries up. I had to like shut
yes,
down messaging
yes,
apps and Facebooks and
yes,
stuff like that.
yes. And if energetically they disappear when you're completely absorbed in oneness,
Yeah,
that skin disappears, you know, for a bit, and that's not useful for living in the world. It's just not frigging useful. So we're in this evolutionary phase of like bringing awakening into the marketplace. And it's like, and we're looking from guidelines from men, men, like there's a whole gender thing there because the feminine way is a bit different, you
yeah.
know? So we're looking at guidelines from men who lived secluded lives, not in the marketplace, and who were protected by a culture that supported it. We don't have any of that stuff now. So where are our guidelines? You know? Yeah, we have a lot of work to do to help the next generation to awaken in a healthier way so that there's less abuse of power, misuse of power, you know?
And this is the organization, and I we have a mutual friend, and he told me all about the work that you do. Yeah, before even the interview. So yeah, Jack, if people want to get in contact with you, your website, I'll put a link down below. And the organization, they can find all of that on your website.
Yeah, I do some one-to-one sessions for people who are at the later stage of their spiritual path. That's on my website, and you know, sign up for the newsletter and I kind of
And you have two books, right?
I have 2 books. Yeah. And with the newsletter, I didn't even send one last year because I was like, I need to get out of the divorce in order to, that's what needs my attention. I need to honor that. But
Yeah.
I will start up a quarterly newsletter again this year. Yeah, that's my work as a teacher. It's down to that right now. But it's ASI. It's just guiding, impacting, supporting the future of spiritual leadership as best I can with all my flaws and all my learnings. I'm just going to give it a shot anyway and
Wow.
see what I can do,
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Incredible. Is there anything else you feel that I haven't covered or I haven't asked you that you would like to cover?
I don't think so. It's just been real fun to hang
It's
out.
been great. It really has. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's great to have an Irish teacher on.
Oh,
I think you're the
oh,
second, maybe second or third, maybe. Yeah.
uh,
So Jack, thank you so much. It's been an amazing conversation.
yeah. Thank you,
So
Gareth. Yeah.
yeah, I'll put all the links down below. If you're watching on YouTube, just click down below into the descriptions, all Jack's website, and I'll put links to her books. And if you're on the podcasts, just go down into the
Yeah. And the
podcast
Association
description.
for Spiritual Integrity, even if you're not a
I'll put it
spiritual
on.
leader, if you're a spiritual leader, join and join. It's only going to help you. And if you're a student or you're interested in it, just sign up for our newsletter. We have free events all the time that are like a webinar 2 weeks ago was talking about psychedelics. Yes, it's illegal. Yes, it's underground.
Huge
However,
though. Yep.
there is a role for it. There is a role for it. It's a spiritual practice. And how do we honor the indigenous culture as it comes in to, it's firmly here, isn't it? In our Western culture or in our, I don't know,
Well, in Ireland, it was
Europe,
magic mushrooms,
US,
Jack.
Canada. Yeah, it was magic mushrooms.
That was
Even though I've
part of
done
your.
ayahuasca in Ireland and I've done Sancta Daime in Ireland, that was there too, underground,
Yeah.
25 years ago.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think part of being a teenager growing up in Dublin was I would, a lot of you would find yourself in the Dublin mountains picking
Looking
mushrooms.
for mushrooms. Yeah. Oh, they were great. I've done the same thing. Done the same thing. Yeah. And
Yeah,
so, good practices around that. That's something we're looking at the moment, a lot of harm is happening in that area. And yeah,
in the
we'd like
plant
to just
medicines. Yeah,
would like to
yeah,
try and do something to have better practice to protect people, the teachers from themselves, the shaman from themselves, and also so students know the right questions to ask, and to know if I'm on this medication, it's dangerous for me to do this. I mean, really dangerous. Some things are,
yes.
some things are not. We need to be able to self-navigate nowadays,
Jack, that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, you've been amazing. Great conversation. Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Garrett, for the opportunity. It's been a blast.
Yeah, I
Great,
really enjoyed it.
great
Thank
to
you. I
know
hope
you.
that the listeners and the viewers enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you,
Bye
everybody.
bye.
This has been the Endless Possibilities Podcast, where the journey of spiritual awakening and energy healing unfolds. Garrett is a lifelong seeker of truth, a spiritual teacher and author, and it's his passion to delve into the profound world of consciousness. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten something from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, the podcast is available on YouTube and all the major podcasting platforms. Find us on Instagram at _mother_force. Take care, and we'll see you soon on the Endless Possibilities Podcast.